Welcome to the Reptile Show review. Does that trigger anybody? Does anybody remember? I do. Pepperidge Farm remembers. This is the review of the December Overland Park, Kansas All-American Reptile and Plant Show. If you don't know what that is, it's a new show circuit that was started this year. The first instance was in Denver, and then they had a location at Charlotte, and they did a second Denver. This is the first Kansas. It was on December 6th, 7th, and 8th, so it's been a couple of weeks. I've ruminated on what happened. Spoiler alert, it was fine, but we'll get into it, get into some details. The All-American Expo circuit is unique among reptile circuits because it's intentionally forward plants. It wants to be like, is this a plant and reptile show? So it makes the composition of the customers who come there very interesting, actually. They tend to like other stuff more as a reptile vendor than maybe reptiles. But sometimes you can trick them into getting a reptile, and that's cool. We love that. If you don't know me, I'm Jessica Hare. I run Hare Hollow Farm and the Holdback Rack podcast. And I sell lots of things, but I have a collection of boas, corn snakes, other North American colubrids, Asian colubrids, ball pythons, and some random things with legs, cave geckos, leopard geckos. I've had this collection since 2019, and before that I kept snakes in the late 20th century. I have done a lot of reptile shows, and I know a lot of things about snakes. And I don't really know how to do a good job at any of them, but I've been to enough of them now that I have things that I like about them and things that I don't like about them. So here we go. I did attend the first All-American in Denver, and I thought that show was great. It was busy. There weren't too many vendors of any one kind necessarily, and everybody seemed pretty happy. And I sold lots of stuff, different kinds of stuff, and that was good. We love that. So people have tax money, so it's easy to have a mediocre show sort of have like a good spring show in a mediocre location. But I don't think Denver is a mediocre location. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, it's easy to do good in the spring. It's harder to do good in December. That being said, I didn't think the December Kansas was going to do as good as the April, I think, Denver. It's just hard. It's hard to do good. It's too close to Christmas. People spend Christmas money. They're not necessarily, going out to the reptile show. Some of them are, but not as many as in the spring. And also, Kansas is not Colorado in terms of like cost of living, disposable income, economy. Overland Park is a nice part of Kansas, that's for sure, but it's not Castle Rock. Let me put it that way. So timeline of events. I drove up Thursday. The show is about 8 hours away from where I live, and it has a bar/restaurant inside of the hotel. It's the Sheraton. You don't have to stay at the hotel if you want to vend this show, but it wasn't that expensive. So like all the conveniences of being right next to the convention center are probably worth the expense. It was attached to like a little breezeway and grassy courtyard to the convention center. It's pretty good. On Friday night, there was a VIP shopping opportunity for VIP customers. That was from 4 to 7, and setup started at 1. I wanted to set up early and maybe go back to the hotel. I never did go back to the hotel. I just sort of waited. So I was there from like 12:30 to 7:30 on Friday, which is a lot. I mean, this is a whole other video of like the unpaid labor of in-person events where, if you stay home, you can do whatever you want while you're waiting to make a sale. You can go to the bathroom and sit on the pooper. If you go to a reptile show, you're sort of on the clock. So your hourly wage is not that great actually, but that's neither here nor there. So this is the load-in map. You can see on the left side of the screen where the hotel is and the hotel parking, and on the right side of the screen is the load-in dock. There's no like semi long-term parking at the load-in dock. You basically have to, if you're staying at the hotel, go get your car, drive it around, load in, drive your car back to the hotel, walk back to your place to set up, because you can't leave it there very long. There isn't that much space, which is fine, but it's something to think about. Especially if you're soloing it, it'd be much easier to do that if you had multiple people. So then they could go walk off and take the car away. And if you're not staying in the hotel, you would move your car to the convention lot, which is like behind or underneath the convention. There's like a covered parking part. The convention center itself is pretty nice. There's multiple rooms too. There's a lot of space outside so that you could sit, hang out. I did sell some items during VIP, no animals. So that's nice, because sometimes VIPs feel a little bit like a waste of space, but then you have to sort of watch your stuff because there's customers walking around. You can't skip it. You're sort of forced into it. I mean, it wasn't a lot of sales, but it was some. So it's fine. Friday night's dinner was Papa John's. We haven't eaten Papa John's in like, I don't know, 8 years. And I used to work there right after high school, and it was delicious then. It's not delicious anymore. I don't know what happened, and I don't like it anymore. Yucky. 3 out of 10. Saturday was a pretty strong day, but I noticed right away that animal sales were struggling a little bit. I sold lots of things, other things, stuff, fluff, wood, supplies, but not a ton of animals. And you're like, well, Jessica, that's your fault for not bringing the right animals. And I'm like, of course. Saturday night's dinner was at McDonald's, which was gross, and I was too ashamed to record it, and I shouldn't have gone there. There's one that's pretty close. Sometimes McDonald's can like hit the spot just right. Not this time, unfortunately. Breakfast Sunday morning was at the little cafe thing. So there's like a cafe and a restaurant inside of the hotel. The cafe's not open at night, but the restaurant is. But you're basically ordering from the restaurant. If you order from the cafe, it gets you coffee in the morning. And so I ordered the very delicious chorizo breakfast burrito, and it had these like au gratin potatoes instead of normal hash browns. 10 out of 10, would recommend. It was so good, I was like mad I didn't eat it earlier. Listen, just trust me. So Sunday was definitely slower than Saturday, but it was still pretty good. Sunday night's dinner, because the breakfast was so fire, ended up going back to the restaurant. It was a delicious salad with pickled onions on a correctly cooked steak with some sort of sweet salad dressing, strawberries, blueberries, and pecans, something like that. I don't know. It was delicious. Recommend. 10 out of 10. And then we left Monday morning and drove home the 8 hours. So let's review. I was told the door was 6,000 people almost, and that is amazing. We love that, especially in December. I think though there was a real struggle getting people to buy pets. I know people were buying snakes and lizards and frogs and stuff. That's great, but it felt like people would ask to hold something, talk about it, be like, this is amazing, I love it, I have 4 ball pythons already. Then they're like, there's no way I could possibly ever have another snake right now, I can't do it. I'm like, well, why are you here and why are you holding it? And this is always the complaint, like people tricking you into using your time to hold your snakes when they're feigning interest in buying it or learning about it, but they already have snakes. That happened a lot. And I was like, they're just there to like have fun and hold other people's snakes. And I find that disgusting and depressing. So please don't do that anymore. Especially when I have a big sign that's like, hey, please don't give my snakes diseases. And then they don't read it and they don't care. So I don't know. That part is like depressing. I sold 3 corn snakes, no ball pythons, no Slowinski eye, and no Dion's rat snakes. Walking around and talking to people, a lot of people did sell some snakes, just like me, but not a ton. It covered expenses and it was fine. Some people did a little bit better. snake lizard wise. Some people did a little worse, snake lizard wise. But I didn't hear like, wow, I sold 40 snakes. It's December. I think that's December. Should any reptile show happen in December if it is explicitly for selling reptiles? I think the answer is no. I know people think some shows in December are good. I think they can be adequate to fine, but I don't know if they're ever really good. Never done a December show, or a January show for that matter. I was like, wow, this is changing my life. I know they exist. I've never done one. Ever. I think it has a lot to do with like the region and maybe like how they fall into when school is out and the macroeconomics around it. I'm sure they exist, but they're not like, wow. So if All America wants any sort of tips, I would move the show forward in time. Don't interrupt St. Louis, but put it in November. Even if it's like early November, that has got to be better than December. December 7th is probably like the latest, like that second week of December. Doesn't really feel like there's like a fourth quarter bump in all sales for all categories. Like people aren't, maybe they're buying a little bit of Christmas presents at reptile shows, but not really. You're not like, wow, I'm in the black because I did a reptile show in December. You say that about spring shows. Wow, I'm in the black because I did a reptile show in the spring, right after taxes come out. Not early spring, middle heat of the spring. That's our Black Friday. So I would move it. I would move it. There was also a competing show at the exact same time, the Central Kansas Reptile Show, same day. And that one's much older, but it was 3 hours away. So I don't think it was competing for audience, but I think it was competing for vendors, and maybe they would have had more vendors there from the region if those shows weren't at the same time. The expenses of the show were pretty high due to distance, duration, and size of my booth. The show's 8 hours away from me. Next time I may try to drive home Sunday night, but it is really hard being really sleepy in the middle of the night after working all day and then driving for 8 hours and like thinking you're gonna crash. So that's dangerous. I don't like driving in really early on Friday and then trying to set up and sell all on the same day because you're really stupid and you're not even talking to people coherently. And I have no sort of backups or other people who can drive for most of these shows. So sometimes I need to take more days. The hotel was $615 for 4 nights with the show discount, and the end cap was $540 with electricity. I think those prices are fair for what was offered, like a 6,000 person show and a nice hotel that didn't have bed bugs in it. So those aren't unfair prices. I would rather pay more to get more attendees and have a cheaper table cost. I know other people feel differently, but I would rather see 6,000 people than 1,000 people because the whatever couple $100 difference between an end cap there and an end cap at a smaller show, I'm gonna sell more stuff for 6,000 people. It's gonna happen. I do wonder if I should have brought more snakes, but I brought around 80 of 4 species and still only sold 3. I think it maybe had to do with the setup wasn't that attractive because it was loose deli. It's because of the hotel thing. The hard part is there's like, if you're bringing acrylic displays and delis and you're one person trying to get them on a dolly to take them inside to protect the animals enclosed from inclement weather, it's just not as convenient as if you just had all colubrid displays or all acrylics. Like a bin of delis is easier to move around, but I don't know if it's the most attractive way. And I've sold pure deli snakes like crazy at some shows because you're just like, this is the deli cup section. But I think there was a lot of deli cup sections at that show. It wasn't special, so that probably hurt sales. It's crazy I didn't sell any ball pythons when I had like bananas, banana calicos, happy, cheap pets. None. Crazy. So I don't know if I would bring more snakes next time, really. Maybe present them differently and see if there's a difference. They didn't want to buy snakes, it seemed like. They wanted to buy stuff. So probably just bring more stuff. Given the duration of time away, I did have to water a lot of the snakes. A lot of people think snakes don't need water for some reason. They definitely do, and they're really thirsty, especially the littler snakes. So that was sort of complicated and makes me not want to bring as many little snakes if I do a show that's this long again. I might even do like 15 snakes, which you're like, well, that's crazy. Because there's like a relationship between how much dollars of inventory you bring and how much dollars you sell. Because you don't sell out of everything, right? It seems ridiculous. You don't want to not make sales because you did sell out of everything. So you sort of want to bring more than what you think you need. But when it's a living thing, you're making it do all this stuff when you don't think you're going to sell it. Is that fair? No. Would I recommend the show to other vendors? Yes, but I probably wouldn't drive more than I drove in, and maybe not even as much as I drove in. 5 hours seems pretty good. 6 hours. If it wasn't 8 hours for me, then you wouldn't need that 2 extra hotel days. And maybe in the spring it'll be like all killer, no filler, which I think it will. It's got a really good date. It's in May. And there's like the grassy breezeway thing. I'm sure the weather's gonna be fire. I think it'll actually like annihilate in the spring. So maybe it's worth coming in from further away. December shows, man, they're hard. The composition of the show as like an attendee was probably good. I don't know if they're like ecstatic. I don't know. I didn't get the vibes. It was half plants, half animals approximately. A little bit of art, but not as much art as other shows. It'd been nice if there had been more just dedicated art. Vendors, there was like a cool plant party bus thing in the back that they drove in and they were selling plants out of the bus. That was very cool and aesthetic. There were PVC cage vendors. Reptile Basics was there selling their supplies. There was frozen feeder vendors. There were still probably too many ball python people. I mean, me included, I guess. But in my opinion, still too many flipper and pet store vendors. I know they bring variety, but they also bring death and destruction. And I'll put a little clip in right here, but a lot of them don't know what they're selling, right? So like, what is the point of getting variety if they don't even know what they're selling? Maybe pick 1 or 2 quality pet stores that are obviously like flipping inventory, but they're doing it at the highest level, and skip the other like goofballs. Okay, and you don't know who's a goofball until it's over. But if they're a goofball, don't invite them back. I don't want to compete against goofballs. Diminishes whatever animals I have and diminishes the whole event. So cut them out. I do think it's a fun like potential like vibes hangout show. So the like attached convention and all the weird little nooks and crannies in the hotel and all the weird nooks and the crannies in the convention center. If a bunch of like bros or friend bros, lady friend bros wanted to go and like make it a fun hangout show, it would be a good place to like plant your flag as like the hangout show. Because if you have that many people and then not as much competition, you're probably going to make enough money and you'll be fine. I did hit my minimum dollar amount to redo the show, which I have one of those now. And because my gross revenue from a show is less stochastic now that I have more dry goods to sell. But because I have a specific margin from those dry goods, I know what I should be making relative to all sort of properties. Like, whatever. Most shows I should make X amount, no matter what time of year or what the door is. If I don't make that, then that show is like really fucked. It's either got a really terrible vendor to attendee ratio, or there's just too much competition in my particular product lines that I'm trying to sell. And I'm just not going to do them anymore. Maybe for 2 or 3 years, like until the economy like comes back. I know people are like, you should do a show fucking 17 times. Just make sure it's no good for you. And I'm like, no. This is vendor abuse. That's what I've seen. It's like gaslighting, vendor abuse. Yeah, well, if you don't keep going, your customers aren't going to remember you. Yes, they will. Yeah. just stay home and sell it online. But if you can make enough money at each show, then you should keep going. But most vendors that I talk to at most shows aren't making enough money to justify being there. So you all need to set a personal goal. If you don't make X amount, you do not come back. And I don't want to hear about like, sometimes it's good. Then they need to stop having the shows at those times. Like if the show is only good in the spring, then cancel the fall and winter versions of the show. Why does it have to be twice a year? It's probably because they booked in those dates. It's too many fucking times a year. Nobody's making money. We're all standing around looking at each other. It's so stupid. No, I'm getting hot. I might have to edit that out. Maybe not. And I don't think the vendors or the promoters are being mean, maybe intentionally. I just do not understand anymore. Like when you talk to people and they're like so gaslit and wrapped up and be like, yeah, I gotta serve the community. Serve it with what? What are you serving? And then they're like, well, it's fun. I'm like, yes, it's fun, but it could be fun and you could actually like be paid for the cost of doing the show. Like, I don't really think, like, I made enough money to cover my expenses at Kansas, but I didn't really get paid. Not really. With all the time away and labor. It mostly just, like, paid for my weekend and that salad, right? If that show stays at that dollar amount of sales, I would probably have to drop that one, too. Because there's not enough time compensation there for my labor. People can't imagine a world. And I know for most people this is a hobby and they never intend to make a profit. And I don't necessarily need to make a profit off of every show, but some of them are horrific. Okay. You should at least cover your expenses. Otherwise, what's the point? The next show for me is Herp's Shawnee. So if you're in the area, I'll see you there. Probably have a little thing like this. Probably not as long though, you know. And then I somehow got into Longview. Those ones have a lot to live up to. If I go down to 7 shows a year, the like criteria for cutting is strict. So tune in for the update. Thanks to the show sponsors: Powerhouse Pythons, Stone Age Ball Pythons, Bravo Zulu Ball Pythons, Gray Family Snakes, BNS Reptilia, and Small Town Exotics. Thanks to all the members that make this channel possible, and thanks to the viewers like you for watching me talk about shows. If you have an all-American reptile and plant show near you, you should attempt to vend it, because you might find it to be like refreshingly nice, even if it's not necessarily like super profitable because the economy is because it's nice. You get a map, you get a lanyard. You don't always get a lanyard in this economy, but you do it all American, and that means something. See you next time.